Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. We are jumping right into one of the most critical geopolitical flashpoints on the map today. We're looking at a huge, high-stakes maneuver that literally just happened. Imagine the tension on the water. For the first time since commercial traffic was halted back in mid-April, two U.S.-flagged vessels have successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to break down the military moves, the policies behind them, and exactly how this tiny stretch of water impacts, well, all of us. Okay, let's dive into this. 20%. To put that into perspective, roughly 20% of the entire globe's energy supplies typically squeeze through this one incredibly narrow shipping lane. When this waterway is functioning normally, global trade hums along just fine. But when it gets restricted, the whole planet feels the economic shockwave. That is the massive scale of the stakes we're dealing with here. So here's our game plan for today's Explainer. First, breaking the blockade. Second, we'll look at what Project Freedom actually is. Third, Iran's ultimatum and response. And finally, the global energy stakes. All right, let's start with Section 1, breaking the blockade. Here are the May 4th transit details.
Right on the morning of May 4th, the U.S. military confirmed that two U.S.-flagged merchant vessels safely made their way through the strait. And you know, they definitely didn't do this alone. They had serious backup from U.S. Navy guided missile destroyers that are operating right now in the Arabian Gulf. But what's really fascinating is what we don't know. The specific cargo these vessels were carrying, where they originated, where they're ultimately heading, all of that is completely undisclosed. Actually, the military is keeping their cards super close to the chest on exactly what kind of direct air or convoy support was right alongside them too.
Which brings us to Section 2. What is Project Freedom? Let's take a look at the policy context behind this. The timeline here is just staggering. Look at how fast this moved. Back on April 18th, the situation escalated when Iran effectively halted commercial traffic in the waterway. For weeks, this standoff was just brewing. Then, boom, May 3rd, President Donald Trump publicly announces Project Freedom. And literally the very next day, May 4th, less than 24 hours later, those U.S.-flagged vessels make this successful transit. It was a rapid, immediate execution of this brand new policy. So, what is this initiative exactly? By definition, Project Freedom is a U.S.-led initiative announced by President Trump with a very specific aim: ensuring the free flow of commercial shipping through this vital global trade route. It's a direct, forceful countermeasure to that mid-April halt, signaling that Washington is absolutely committed to keeping this massive shipping lane open. You can really see this proactive stance in the official statement from U.S. Central Command. They said, quote, "American forces are actively assisting efforts to restore transit for commercial shipping. As a first step, two U.S.-flagged merchant vessels have successfully transited." End quote. I really want to highlight the phrases actively assisting and as a first step. This isn't just a passive monitoring situation. The military is actively involved, and they are basically telling us this is just the beginning of a much larger operation. Now, Project Freedom isn't the whole shebang. Separately, Washington is trying to piece together a much broader, multinational framework known as the Maritime Freedom Construct. The whole idea is to get allies together to share critical intelligence, provide safe routing for these commercial ships, and align their diplomatic and military efforts. It's kind of like a giant puzzle, but it is worth noting that building this coalition hasn't been completely smooth sailing. Earlier proposals actually faced some pretty stiff resistance from certain European partners. Of course, every action over there sparks a reaction. Let's move to Section 3, Iran's ultimatum and response, the adversary's stance. Unsurprisingly, the pushback from Tehran's military leadership has been stark. According to the Fars news agency, the commander of the Hatem al-Anbiya Central Headquarters issued this incredibly direct threat. Quote, "Any foreign military force, especially the American military, will be targeted if it attempts to approach or enter the Strait of Hormuz." I mean, that is a crystal clear line in the sand regarding any foreign naval activity in their backyard. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive geopolitical chess match playing out right now. On the left, you have the U.S. objective, using naval destroyers to forcibly assist and restore commercial shipping. On the right, what analysts are calling Tehran's dilemma. Because the U.S. is pushing these vessels through with heavy military backing, Tehran is forced into a corner. They literally have to choose. Do they directly confront American naval forces and risk a massive escalation, or do they stand down, let the traffic resume, and break their own blockade? It's a brutal strategic choice. Which brings us to our final section, the global energy stakes. Here's why this actually matters to you. Let's trace the domino effect here. Step 1. A standoff like this disrupts the strait.
Step 2. Because that waterway is such a massive bottleneck, global commercial shipping is instantly delayed or halted entirely. Shippers have to scramble for alternate routes, which takes time and money. And that leads to step 3. Energy prices shoot up all over the world. Remember that 20% figure we talked about? When a fifth of the globe's energy supply is threatened, the markets react in real time, and consumers literally everywhere end up paying for it.
So the crucial point is that this standoff isn't happening in a vacuum. To add massive pressure to the whole situation, the US is concurrently enforcing its own strict blockade on Iranian exports. So you basically have competing blockades squeezing both sides simultaneously. It makes the strategic calculus for both Washington and Tehran incredibly complex and, frankly, super volatile. So, what does this all mean going forward? We saw 2 US-flagged vessels make a successful transit today, but the big questions are still hanging out there. As the US pushes Project Freedom and tries to build out this maritime freedom construct, we really have to ask, is this multinational framework going to stabilize the region and protect the global economy? Or is pushing guided missile destroyers through there going to tip this high-stakes standoff into a renewed conflict? It's a super fragile balance, and it's something we're all going to be watching very closely. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious, and we'll catch you next time.